When billionaire Michael Harrington secretly set up cameras in his mansion to watch over his young son, he expected to catch trouble, but what he saw instead was a quiet new maid whose kindness and patience were about to change their lives forever. Michael Harrington was a man who had everything money could buy: luxurious cars, a sprawling mansion, and a lifestyle that most people only dreamt of. But despite all his wealth, there was one thing that troubled him constantly: his young son, Leo. Michael was a single father, and ever since his wife had passed away a few years ago, he had been struggling to balance his demanding career with raising a child. Leo was only 7, a bright and sensitive boy. But lately, Michael had begun to notice subtle changes in him. He seemed quieter than usual, less enthusiastic during playtime, often retreated into his room, staring out the window for long periods. As a father, Michael's instinct told him that something was wrong. At first, he tried to console himself. Maybe Leo was just growing up, or maybe he was adjusting to life without his mother. But the uneasy feeling in his chest grew stronger with each passing day. Every time Michael left for work, he would glance back at Leo playing alone in the enormous living room and feel a pang of guilt. He knew that with his busy schedule, he couldn't always be there to protect his son from the small dangers or the big disappointments that life could bring. That thought gnawed at him day and night. Unable to shake off his worries, Michael made a decision. He would install hidden cameras throughout the mansion. The cameras were small, discreet, and positioned in places where they could capture most of the house's daily activity. He justified it to himself as a necessary precaution. "I just need to make sure Leo is safe," he told himself repeatedly. To Michael, it wasn't about mistrusting his staff or invading his son's privacy. It was about being a vigilant parent, especially when he couldn't be physically present. The day the cameras were installed, Michael felt a strange mix of relief and guilt. He walked through the empty hallways of his mansion, imagining them filled with invisible eyes watching over his son. He wondered what it must feel like for Leo to live under constant observation, but he pushed the thought aside. The cameras would only record, never interfere. They would be like a silent guardian, always present, always alert. Around the same time, a new maid joined the household. Her name was Clara. She was quiet, reserved, carried herself with a calm confidence that immediately set her apart from the other staff. She didn't chatter in the hallways or engage in gossip. She followed her tasks meticulously, whether it was cleaning the grand living room or organizing the kitchen cabinets. Michael noticed her, of course, but he had little time to interact with any of his employees beyond brief greetings. He simply observed her from a distance, wondering what kind of person would choose to work in such a place, without being distracted by the wealth and grandeur around them. Clara, meanwhile, seemed to be drawn to Leo in her own quiet way. She watched him from afar, noticing how he would sit at the piano for hours, tracing the keys with his fingers, but not playing, lost in his thoughts. She saw him wandering through the gardens, sometimes stopping to watch the birds or pick a flower, as if seeking solace in small, unnoticed moments. Clara didn't approach him immediately. She understood that trust could not be forced, especially with a child who had experienced loss. Instead, she began her work around him, performing her duties with precision, but always keeping an eye on his subtle expressions, the small sighs, the quiet hums, and the occasional smiles that flickered and disappeared too quickly. Michael continued to watch the footage from the hidden cameras each evening after work. At first, it was mundane Leo playing with his toys, Clara quietly dusting the shelves, the staff going about their usual chores. But gradually, he began to notice small things. Clara's behavior was different from the others. She didn't just clean. She seemed to anticipate Leo's needs. She would leave a book on his desk, neatly folded with a handwritten note tucked inside. She would arrange his toys carefully, as if creating a space that was comforting rather than chaotic. Michael felt a mixture of curiosity and unease. Was she simply meticulous, or was there something more? As the days passed, Michael's protective instincts became stronger. He realized that these cameras, which he had initially installed out of fear, were giving him glimpses into a world he had never seen. He saw Clara kneeling beside Leo as he tried to build a complicated Lego structure. patiently guiding his hands and encouraging him without interfering. He saw her speaking softly to him when he was upset, her presence calming him in ways Michael hadn't been able to achieve. It was strange for Michael to admit, but he felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Leo wasn't as alone as he feared. Despite this reassurance, Michael couldn't help but feel the tension between relief and suspicion. Clara was new, and her constant attention to Leo seemed almost too perfect. Michael's mind raced with possibilities. Could someone be manipulating his son? Was Clara really trustworthy, or was he missing something? He decided he would continue watching, learning everything he could, because the safety of his child was worth the scrutiny. No matter how uncomfortable it made him feel, Michael's mansion, once a place of opulence and status, had quietly transformed into a space of silent observation, where invisible eyes captured every laugh, every tear, and every small act of care. And in the midst of all this, Leo continued to grow, unaware of the watchful eyes surrounding him, while Clara carried on with her duties, slowly becoming a presence that would soon change everything Michael thought he knew about love, trust, and the true meaning of care. The first part of this story is a delicate balance of fear and hope, suspicion and kindness, all set against the backdrop of a wealthy household where appearances are often misleading. It shows how a father's anxiety can lead him to extraordinary measures, and how a quiet, thoughtful presence like Clara's can begin to make a profound difference in a child's life. Even before anyone fully understands it, Michael had begun to notice patterns in the footage from the hidden cameras that both comforted and puzzled him. Clara's behavior was different from every other staff member, and the more he watched, the more he realized how much attention she gave to his son. Leo, unlike the other maids who went about their work quickly and efficiently, Clara moved slowly, deliberately, and with purpose. She didn't just clean the rooms or arrange the furniture, she seemed to create spaces where Leo could feel safe. She would leave a small blanket on his favorite chair, place his toys neatly on the shelf, or even fold his clothes in a particular way that seemed designed to make him smile. It was these little gestures that Michael found both comforting and mysterious. Every evening, after long hours in the office, Michael would sit alone in his study and watch the footage. At first, he watched casually, thinking he would only check to ensure that nothing unusual was happening. But as days passed, he began noticing details he had never seen before. He saw Clara talking to Leo in soft, gentle tones, coaxing him to eat his meals when he had no appetite, or helping him tie his shoelaces when he struggled. She would crouch beside him at the piano, guiding his small hands over the keys, not forcing him to play a song, but encouraging him to explore the instrument. It was a kind of patience Michael had never seen, before an attention to detail and emotional sensitivity that made him sit back and reconsider what he thought he knew about the people around him. What struck Michael the most was Clara's consistency. She didn't appear to tire, didn't complain, and didn't ask for recognition. Other staff members occasionally glanced at Leo or offered quick words of encouragement, but Clara's care went far beyond these small gestures. She seemed to notice everything when Leo's socks didn't match, when his backpack was slightly torn, or when a book he loved had fallen to the floor. She would fix these little things quietly, without ever drawing attention to herself, and her actions made the home feel more alive, warmer, and somehow safer. Michael found himself both intrigued and unsettled. Was Clara really this kind? Or was there another motive behind her behavior? Meanwhile, Leo began to respond to her presence. Initially, he had been reserved, almost shy around her. He would glance up when she spoke, nod politely, and return to whatever he was doing, whether it was drawing or playing with his toys. But slowly, he began to seek her out. Michael noticed through the cameras that Leo would linger in areas where Clara was working, sometimes simply watching her fold clothes or water the plants. Occasionally, he would ask a question or request help with a toy, and Clara would always respond with patience and warmth, never appearing rushed or annoyed. The footage also revealed moments that Michael could not have predicted. One afternoon, Leo appeared frustrated while trying to build a complex Lego set. He slammed his hands on the table and started to cry softly. Clara, who had been quietly dusting nearby, immediately noticed. She walked over without saying a word, knelt beside him, and carefully helped him piece together the blocks. She spoke in calming tones, encouraging him, offering guidance only when necessary, and celebrating each small success. Leo's cries faded into quiet concentration, and by the time he completed the structure, he was smiling broadly. Michael watched this scene over and over, struck by the realization that his son was responding to her care in a way he had never seen before. Michael also began to notice how other staff members reacted to Clara. Some seemed puzzled by her methods, whispering to one another about how she went above and beyond in her duties. Others seemed uncomfortable with her presence, as if they could sense the bond forming between Clara and Leo. Michael, from the privacy of his study, felt a mix of relief and skepticism. He wanted to trust her, yet he couldn't shake off the feeling that something unusual was happening. He reminded himself that his primary goal was to protect Leo, not judge Clara. Still, he couldn't deny that he was fascinated by the way she interacted with his son. One evening, Michael watched a particularly revealing sequence. Leo had been quiet all day, barely speaking during breakfast or lunch. Later, he sat alone in the corner of the living room, hugging his knees. Clara noticed immediately. She sat beside him silently at first, then gently placed her hand on his shoulder. Leo looked up, startled, but did not move away. She spoke softly, asking about his day, listening patiently as he began to talk about small worries that he had never voiced before. He mentioned feeling lonely, missing his mother, and sometimes worrying that he disappointed his father. Clara listened without interrupting, offering comforting words and simply being present. Michael felt a lump in his throat as he realized that, through the cameras, he was witnessing something extraordinary. Clara was not just caring for his son's physical needs, she was nurturing his emotional world. Over the next few days, Michael continued to watch her interactions, noticing patterns that deepened his admiration and curiosity. Clara often left little notes for Leo, encouraging words, reminders to take care of himself, or even tiny drawings that seemed to brighten his day. She anticipated his needs before he even asked, creating an environment where Leo could feel seen, understood, and safe. Michael realized that Clara's presence was beginning to change Leo in subtle ways. He laughed more, spoke more openly, and began exploring activities he had previously ignored, despite the reassurance. Michael's mind still wrestled with doubt. He had installed the cameras to protect Leo, yet now he was seeing that they were revealing something far more profound. Clara was not a threat, she was a hidden blessing. But Michael also knew he could not ignore the truth. He had been distant, wrapped up in his work, and Leo had been quietly yearning for attention and care that he, as a father, had not fully provided. The cameras had captured not just Clara's kindness, but also his own absence. It was during one of these evening viewings that Michael noticed something truly remarkable. Clara had developed a small ritual with Leo. Each night before dinner, she would check in on him, asking how he felt, if he needed anything, simply sitting with him while he drew or read. She made no demands, offered no reprimands, and expected nothing in return. Michael realized that her presence had become a stabilizing force in Leo's life, a source of comfort and security that he, despite his wealth and effort, had struggled to provide. Michael sat back in his chair, feeling a complex swirl of emotions: awe, relief, guilt, and curiosity. The footage he watched each day revealed that Clara was far more than a maid. She was someone who could understand and nurture a child in ways he could not, and her quiet, patient care was transforming Leo's world. Michael began to see that the mansion, with all its grandeur, had only recently begun to feel like a home, a place where love, attention, and genuine care were more valuable than money or possessions. In those quiet evenings, watching the interactions unfold, Michael realized that the story of his household was changing. Clara's gentle presence was awakening something in Leo, and perhaps in himself as well. He began to understand that protection alone was not enough. Love, patience, and understanding were just as important. The cameras, meant to catch potential danger, were instead revealing a hidden truth: that sometimes the people who make the greatest difference in our lives are those we least expect. Michael had been watching the hidden camera footage for weeks now, and while he had grown used to seeing Clara interact with Leo in kind and gentle ways, what he saw one evening left him completely stunned. It was a quiet afternoon in the mansion, with sunlight streaming softly through the large windows of Leo's room. Leo was sitting on the floor with his favorite stuffed bear, small hands clutching it tightly as if it could somehow protect him from the world outside. His eyes were distant, reflecting a sadness that Michael had come to recognize as more than just childhood moodiness. Clara, as usual, was quietly tidying the room. But when she noticed Leo's expression, she immediately put down the duster she was holding and sat. Beside him on the floor, Michael watched with a growing mix of curiosity and concern. Clara did not rush to speak or to offer solutions. Instead, she let Leo settle for a moment, her calm presence filling the room without any words. Slowly, she leaned closer, speaking in a soft, reassuring tone that seemed to gently coax Leo out of his shell. At first, Leo's voice was barely audible. A quiet murmur as he spoke about the loneliness he sometimes felt and the small fears that haunted him when his father was away at work. He admitted that he missed his mother terribly, that he sometimes worried about being a burden to his father, and that he felt invisible when the adults in his life were too busy to notice him. Clara listened attentively, nodding occasionally, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She didn't interrupt, judge, or dismiss his feelings. She simply offered a safe space where he could express himself freely. Her presence was so patient, so attentive, that Michael felt a pang of guilt watching from the hidden camera. He realized that this was exactly what Leo needed, someone who could see his pain and respond with empathy, not just guidance or discipline. Clara's ability to understand a child's emotions went far beyond the usual care of a nanny or a maid. She seemed to instinctively know how to reach Leo, how to meet him at his level, and how to make him feel truly heard. As Leo spoke, his voice grew steadier, and he began to describe memories of his mother. Small moments that he missed dearly. He talked about bedtime stories, walks in the park, and the way his mother used to sing softly when he was scared. Clara encouraged him to share these memories, responding with words of understanding and comfort. She reminded him that it was okay to miss someone, that it was natural to feel sad, that expressing these emotions didn't make him weak. Michael was struck by the depth of this interaction. No camera or surveillance could have predicted that the simple act of listening, the quiet presence of a caring adult, could have such a profound effect on a child. As the days went on, Michael watched more footage that revealed Clara's unique approach to helping Leo navigate his emotions. She began small rituals that brought consistency and comfort to his life. Every morning, she would check in with him before school, asking how he was feeling and offering small words of encouragement. She would leave little notes in his room with affirmations like, "You are brave," or "You are loved," written in her neat handwriting. She even started helping him with creative projects, drawing alongside him or helping him build imaginative Lego worlds that mirrored his inner thoughts and feelings. Each interaction was filled with patience, understanding, and a rare emotional intelligence that seemed almost magical to Michael. One particular afternoon, Michael noticed a moment that would remain etched in his memory. Leo had struggled with a drawing, crumpling the paper in frustration and nearly giving up entirely. Clara knelt beside him, took a deep breath, and spoke in calm, measured tones. She encouraged him to try again, showing him that mistakes were not failures but opportunities to learn. Slowly, Leo began to draw once more, and this time he did so with renewed focus and a small, proud smile on his face. Michael realized that this was more than just teaching patience. It was instilling confidence, resilience, and emotional strength in his son, qualities that would stay with him far beyond. Childhood Michael also began to understand that Clara's actions were not random. They were deliberate, grounded in experience and empathy. He later discovered that she had once been a child counselor, trained to understand and respond to children's emotional needs. After losing her own son to illness, she had chosen to take simpler jobs to survive. But her instincts and skills remained intact. Everything she did with Leo reflected a deep understanding of child psychology. Yet it was delivered with such humility and care that no one else could have recognized it. Michael felt both awe and gratitude. Here was a woman not bound by the luxury of his household, giving the kind of love and attention that he himself had struggled to provide. Through the cameras, Michael also observed how Leo began to change. He was more confident, more willing to speak about his thoughts, and more willing to engage with the world around him. Clara's presence gave him a sense of stability that had been missing since his mother's passing. Even small moments, like sharing a snack, picking flowers in the garden, or laughing at a silly joke, were now infused with warmth and joy. Michael began to realize that Clara had created a bridge between him and his son, a bridge built on trust, empathy, and genuine care. Yet, with every positive moment, Michael felt a twinge of guilt. He had installed the cameras to protect Leo, but in doing so, he had been watching the intimate, tender moments of their relationship unfold in a way that felt almost intrusive. He questioned whether he was crossing a line, whether surveillance had replaced real connection. And yet, he could not deny the truth he saw on the screens. Clara's presence was healing a child in ways he could not. The cameras, meant to detect danger, had instead revealed the profound impact of kindness. As the week progressed, Michael saw a moment that crystallized everything he had been witnessing. Leo had been upset all morning, refusing to eat breakfast and wandering the hallways in frustration. Clara found him sitting on the staircase, head in hands, and she sat beside him quietly. She asked gentle questions, not pressing him for answers, and allowed him to express his sadness. She shared a story from her own past, carefully selected to let Leo know he was not alone in feeling scared or sad. For the first time in weeks, Leo smiled, not a big smile, but a small, tentative one that seemed to light up his face. Michael realized that in this quiet exchange, Leo had found hope, empathy, and understanding in a way that no amount of wealth could provide. Watching all of this, Michael began to reflect deeply on his role as a father. He understood that his focus on work, his absence from many of Leo's daily experiences, had left a gap in his son's emotional development. Clara was filling that gap, not just as a caretaker, but as a guide, mentor, and source of comfort. Michael felt a mix of relief, admiration, and humility. He realized that true care could not be measured in luxury or money. It was measured in attention, presence, and emotional understanding. By the end of that week, Michael had come to an important realization. Clara was not only good for Leo, she was good for him as well. She showed him how to see his son's needs beyond material comfort, how to understand the subtle signs of emotion, and how to be present even when life demanded his attention elsewhere. The mansion, once a place of cold wealth, had begun to feel warm, alive, and full of connection. Michael knew that his relationship with Leo and the happiness of his son would never be the same again. The cameras had revealed what Michael could not provide on his own: emotional safety, understanding, and unconditional support. Clara, in her quiet and gentle way, had become more than a maid. She was a healer of hearts, a protector of childhood innocence, and a guiding light for a boy learning to navigate grief, fear, and growing pains. And as Michael watched, he understood something profound. Sometimes, the people we least expect can change our lives forever. Michael's curiosity about Clara had grown beyond professional interest. He felt an urgent need to understand the woman who had become such a vital part of his son's life. Her gentle demeanor, her patience, and her extraordinary ability to connect with Leo on an emotional level fascinated him. One evening, after watching yet another heartfelt interaction between Clara and Leo, he decided it was time to learn more about her past. He had always believed that a person's actions were shaped by their experiences, and Michael was determined to uncover the story that had given Clara the skills and compassion he had come to admire. He began by asking around discreetly. The other staff members knew little about Clara. Some mentioned that she had worked in a variety of households, always leaving on good terms. Others speculated that she was simply private, preferring to keep her personal life to herself. Michael realized that he would need to dig deeper. With careful discretion, he contacted an old acquaintance who specialized in background research. Within a few days, he learned something that made him pause and sit back in his chair, stunned. Clara had not only been a maid or housekeeper in previous homes, she had been a trained child counselor. specializing in helping children navigate trauma, loss, and emotional difficulties. Michael's mind raced as he absorbed the information. It explained so much: the patience, the intuition, the way she seemed to understand Leo without needing words. It also explained the occasional flicker of sadness he sometimes saw in her eyes. As he continued reading the detailed report, he discovered the story that had shaped Clara's life. She had once had a young son, a boy not much older than Leo, who had fallen seriously ill. She had devoted every ounce of her energy, love, and hope to caring for him, seeking every possible treatment and staying awake night after night to comfort him. Yet despite her efforts, her son had passed away. The grief had been devastating, but instead of closing her heart to the world, Clara had chosen to dedicate herself to helping other children. She had taken simpler jobs after the loss, but the skills, empathy, and understanding she possessed had remained intact. Michael felt a wave of emotion wash over him as he realized the significance of this revelation. Clara's past suffering had transformed her into someone capable of extraordinary care. He thought about how she had been interacting with Leo not as a nanny or a maid, but as someone who truly understood what it meant to feel loss, fear, and loneliness. The realization humbled him. He had been so focused on providing for Leo materially that he had overlooked the deeper needs of his son. Money, luxury, and gadgets could never replace the comfort of a caring adult who could listen, empathize, and nurture. Determined to see things from Clara's perspective, Michael decided to observe her more closely through the cameras, but now with a new understanding. He watched how she carefully structured small routines in Leo's day to create a sense of stability. Every morning she would greet him with a soft smile, help him prepare for school, and leave encouraging notes tucked into his lunchbox. In the afternoons, she would engage him in creative play, sometimes building stories with his toys or helping him explore music, all while teaching him patience and confidence. Even when Leo acted out or became frustrated, Clara handled the situation with a calmness that Michael admired deeply. She never raised her voice, never punished him harshly, and never made him feel less than loved. Michael began to notice subtle details that previously escaped him. Clara often stayed behind after completing her chores to ensure that Leo had eaten properly, that he was hydrated, and that he had moments of calm to rest or play. She anticipated his emotional needs in a way that no one else could. For example, when Leo seemed particularly anxious one evening, she quietly arranged his room to be cozy, brought him his favorite stuffed bear, and sat beside him while he slowly worked through his feelings. Michael watched in awe as Clara offered gentle reassurances, whispered kind words, and allowed Leo to cry without judgment. He realized that these small acts were far more powerful than anything he could provide with money or attention alone. Michael's admiration soon mixed with a sense of responsibility. He understood that he had been distant, prioritizing work and the trappings of wealth over his son's emotional well-being. The hidden cameras had revealed more than Clara's kindness. They had revealed his own absence. He reflected on the times he had missed school recitals, birthday celebrations, and quiet moments with Leo. He felt a deep sense of regret, but also a new resolve. He needed to change. If Clara could dedicate herself to Leo with such care, he could at least strive to be present, supportive, and emotionally available. To bridge the gap, Michael decided to speak with Clara directly. He approached her one evening after dinner, choosing a time when Leo was asleep. Clara greeted him politely, her usual calm demeanor present. But he could see the subtle tension in her posture, as if she were waiting to understand his intentions. Michael began carefully, explaining that he had learned about her background and her experiences. He admitted that he had initially installed cameras to monitor Leo's safety, but had come to realize that what he saw was not something to be suspicious of. It was extraordinary care. Clara listened quietly, nodding, but Michael could see her eyes glisten with a mixture of surprise and cautious hope. He continued, expressing his gratitude for everything she had done for Leo. He spoke about his own regrets, admitting that he had not always been present or emotionally available for his son. He explained that watching her interactions had shown him what true care looked like, and that he wanted to work with her, not against her, to ensure that Leo grew up feeling loved, safe, and supported. Clara's response was gentle but sincere. She explained that she had never intended to replace Michael as a father, but that she had wanted to create a space where Leo could feel secure, understood, and happy. She had been patient, knowing that trust takes time, and that a child who has experienced loss or absence needs consistent support more than grand gestures. Her words resonated deeply with Michael, confirming what he had seen through the cameras. Clara's approach was not only effective but deeply rooted in compassion and experience. Over the next few days, Michael made subtle changes in the household. He began spending more time with Leo, attending small moments that he had previously overlooked, like helping him with homework, reading bedtime stories, or simply walking through the gardens together. He also made it clear to Clara that her role in the household was valued, not just as a maid, but as a partner in ensuring Leo's emotional well-being. The staff noticed the change in dynamics, seeing a father who was learning to be present and a maid who was quietly appreciated for her extraordinary contribution. Michael also realized that trust was not only about observation, but about understanding and communication. The hidden cameras had revealed truths, yes, but the real breakthrough came from connecting with Clara as a person. By learning her story, he began to appreciate the depth of her empathy, breadth of her patience, and the selflessness of her care. He realized that Leo's happiness, indeed the happiness of the household, depended on fostering genuine human connections, rather than relying solely on surveillance or wealth. Through this process, Michael's perspective on life shifted. He had always equated success with money, status, and possessions, but he now understood that the most profound impact comes from kindness, understanding, and presence. Clara's past pain, turned into strength and empathy, had changed his son's world. In doing so, it had begun to transform him as well. He felt gratitude, awe, and a renewed sense of responsibility, not just as a father, but as a human being capable of growth and change. By the end of this period, Michael had reached a conclusion that would shape the rest of their lives. Clara's background and experiences were not just relevant, they were essential. She had shown him that healing, emotional support, patience could change a child's life in ways that wealth and luxury never could. Michael committed to being more present, more attentive, and more loving, understanding that true care is not bought but nurtured through connection, empathy, and shared humanity. The household, once defined by status and opulence, now began to feel like a real home, full of warmth, trust, and understanding. After weeks of watching the hidden camera footage, learning about Clara's past, and observing her gentle care for Leo, Michael Harrington knew it was time to make real changes in their lives. The realization had grown stronger each day that wealth and luxury could never replace the emotional presence of a loving adult. Clara had not only been a calming and nurturing presence for Leo, but she had also taught Michael an invaluable lesson. True care comes from understanding, patience, and empathy, not money or status. He understood that if he wanted Leo to grow up happy and emotionally strong, he needed to work together with Clara, rather than just observing her from a distance. The very next morning, Michael made his first decision. The cameras would be removed. He understood that while they had provided him insight, they had also created a barrier, sense of surveillance that could never replace genuine connection. He called the technicians who had installed them and instructed them to remove every single one. As he watched the workers take down the small devices, he felt a sense of freedom, as though a weight had been lifted from both him and his son. He realized that trust could not be built on observation alone. He needed to be present, to participate, and to form a bond that was visible, tangible, and heartfelt. That afternoon, Michael sat down with Clara to speak openly. For the first time, without hidden cameras or silent observation, he thanked her for everything she had done for Leo, explaining that he now fully understood the importance of her work. He admitted his earlier fears and the reasons behind the surveillance, confessing that he had been overprotective because he feared something bad might happen to his son. Clara listened quietly, her eyes soft but clear. She forgave the intrusion in her calm, thoughtful manner, explaining that her priority had always been Leo's well-being. The conversation deepened their mutual respect and understanding. turning their professional relationship into one of partnership. With the cameras gone and trust established, Michael began actively participating in Leo's life. He made a point to be home for small moments, breakfast, after-school activities, and bedtime stories. He realized that these were the moments that mattered most to a child, moments where emotional bonds are built, not bought. Clara continued her work with Leo, but now Michael was present too. Learning from her approach and adding his own presence into the mix, he discovered that even small acts like helping Leo tie his shoes, asking about his day, or sitting beside him while he drew had a tremendous impact. Leo began to smile more, speak more openly, and show excitement in ways Michael had not seen in years. Clara's influence continued to guide Leo's emotional growth. She had built a foundation of trust, patience, and understanding, and Michael was now helping to reinforce it. Together, they encouraged Leo to explore new interests, try new activities, and express himself freely. Music lessons, creative play, and quiet reflection time became a daily routine, and Leo began to thrive. Michael noticed that his son was no longer withdrawn or anxious, but confident and happy. The transformation was subtle, yet profound, showing that love, guidance, and attention could have far more impact than wealth, gifts, or fancy trips. Over time, the relationship between Michael, Leo, and Clara evolved into a close, supportive family dynamic. Michael no longer felt like a distant father. He was actively participating in his son's life, learning to be patient, understanding, and emotionally available. Clara became more than a caretaker. She was a trusted mentor, someone whose experience and compassion helped guide both father and son through the challenges of daily life. The mansion, which had once been a silent, formal space, was now filled with laughter, conversation, and warmth. It became a home rather than just a house. Michael also began to recognize the impact Clara had on him personally. He had always measured success by wealth, status, and achievements. But Clara showed him that emotional intelligence, patience, and genuine care were far more valuable. He started to appreciate small, meaningful moments rather than focusing solely on his career or possessions. Every evening spent reading with Leo, helping him with a school project, or simply walking in the garden became a cherished memory. Michael realized that these moments would shape Leo's life far more than any material luxury ever could. The staff in the household also noticed the changes. Michael's approach to parenting had shifted, and the atmosphere in the mansion became warmer and more collaborative. The staff respected Clara even more, seeing how her guidance had created harmony and emotional balance in the home. They also respected Michael's efforts to become a present and involved father. The house, once filled with quiet formality, now hummed with life, conversation, and a sense of connection that had been missing for years. One afternoon, Michael reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. He remembered the day he installed the cameras, thinking they were necessary for protection, and now he realized how limited his understanding had been. The footage that had revealed Clara's extraordinary care had also revealed his own shortcomings as a father. But instead of dwelling on guilt, he chose to use that knowledge to grow. He learned that being a good parent meant more than providing for material needs. It meant showing up, listening, empathizing, and participating in the emotional lives of his children. Leo, now more confident and joyful, began to express his feelings openly. He would run to Michael after school, eager to share his experiences, and he developed a deep trust in Clara as well. Michael noticed how Leo had learned to handle small disappointments with resilience, a skill Clara had helped him develop through patience and encouragement. The boy had become emotionally strong, yet still tender-hearted, able to express joy, sadness, curiosity, without fear or hesitation. Watching this growth filled Michael with pride, gratitude, and a sense of wonder at the transformative power of love and care. Clara continued to guide Leo, but now her role was fully integrated into a family dynamic rather than a one-sided caregiving situation. Michael, as a father, became an active participant, learning from her methods and adding his own love and attention to the mix. Together, they created a balanced, supportive environment where Leo could thrive emotionally, socially, and academically. Michael realized that the true wealth of a household was not measured in money, cars, or mansion size, but in the strength of human connection, empathy, and trust. Over time, the relationship between Michael, Clara, and Leo deepened further. Family dinners became moments of conversation and laughter. Evening walks turned into adventures of discovery and bonding. And bedtime routines were filled with stories, questions, and gentle guidance. Michael found that he was becoming more patient, understanding, and attentive not only to Leo but also to the people around him. Clara's presence had catalyzed a profound transformation in him, showing that emotional growth is possible at any stage of life when one opens the heart to care and understanding. Finally, Michael understood the true lesson of their experience. The cameras, which had once symbolized suspicion and fear, had revealed the extraordinary power of compassion and presence. Clara's quiet, consistent care had transformed Leo's life, and Michael's willingness to learn and participate had strengthened their bond as father and son. Together, they had created a household defined not by wealth, but by love, trust, and emotional connection. The mansion, once a symbol of isolation and observation, had become a home full of life, warmth, and hope, a place where a child could grow, a father could learn, and a compassionate heart could flourish. By the end of this journey, Michael no longer saw Clara as just a maid or employee. She was family. Leo thrived under their combined care, growing into a confident, emotionally healthy child. Michael had learned the power of empathy, presence, and understanding. The household had transformed into a true home. The story of the cameras, the fears, and the discoveries became a memory of how a quiet, compassionate person can change lives, not through wealth or authority, but through patience, kindness, and genuine care.